All right. I wanted to say this on the recording so other people know too. I looked everywhere to find religious themed summer um, festivals, and there just aren't very many. I mean, there are some that happen to take place in summer, but aren't really connected to summer. Um, and there are um, a couple that I found that I should have done on the winter solstice because they are summer activities that take place in the southern hemisphere. So it's actually winter there. And we don't think about it that way. So I guess I didn't do a very good job of searching when I was doing winter. Um, but yeah, there's just not a whole lot. So we'll have to think about why that might be as we're working through what I was able to find today. Um, but anyhow, we can do what we've got. So, as we've been doing, this is our last session for those of you who didn't remember. We have gone through the whole calendar year, the whole agricultural year. We started with the fall in the fall, and now we're wrapping up with the summer. Um, so we'll take a break now for the summer and come back with a new topic in September. And I believe we talked about doing something with the liturgy for next year, so I'll work on that and see what I can come up with. But anyhow, so summer solstice. Thinking about what is this? Um, what is this concept? So we have, the solstice. The summer solstice is the longest day and shortest night of the year for whichever hemisphere you're in. And so we're talking about, more daylight rather than less daylight, which is certainly, I think, in the human psyche, a positive thing. We talked at the very beginning when we did the introduction to this concept about the primeval fear of the dark and the unknown, and what is lurking out there that we can't see, and things like that. So there's certainly something to be celebrated in having longer daylight. Weather-wise, we're either looking at hot and dry or hot and humid, depending on where you are. Our Mediterranean climates have the dry season during the summer, but then there are other places like where I come from where you walk outside and you can pretty much cut the air with a knife, and you might as well not do your hair because as soon as you step outside, it goes poof. um, and it's pretty miserable. And in those places, you get a thunderstorm every afternoon, and somehow after the rain stops, it's more humid than it was before it started raining. So different experiences with the weather, but definitely summer goes with hot, or at least warm, um, comparatively speaking. Summer is a time in terms of agriculture for the growth of life, for the springtime where we plant, or the springtime when we think about new babies being born for animals. Um, and now we're in the time of year where they can grow and flourish, and things are not as scary and challenging for people. There is some harvesting. We have strawberry season and we have corn season, and certain ones that grow a little faster than others. We harvest in the summer and have plenty. But then there's also the potential for disaster in agriculture because of the heat. We have the potential for drought. If we don't get enough water for our crops, then they can fail. We can get too much water in some of those more humid places where they can end up with flooding and issues like that. We can get, of course, forest fires and drier places where it doesn't rain for many months in a row. And so there's definitely still some concern to be had in this season, even though it is probably the historically the quote easiest season to get through. And of course, reminding ourselves that this is not a universal experience. The poles um, certainly can't claim to ever be hot, but they do get a little warmer and have those weird times when they have 24 hours of sunlight, and the sun never actually goes down for them because they are so close to the top of the earth that the sunlight comes up over and keeps them lit all night long. In the tropics, they have this kind of weather all the time for a lot of places. And of course, remembering our hemispheres that we up here in the north tend to dominate the conversation, at least in the English speaking world. But there's a whole half a planet where there are the opposite experiences going on right now. So as we, at least theoretically, start to move toward the hotter season, even though these past few days it's been freezing and wet. We have people who are moving more toward their cold season in other parts of the world. A few themes and other little tidbits related to summer. As you know, I love to look at the etymology of words to try to discern something about what it means or what historically it has meant. And I am disappointed to have to report to you that summer just means summer. It it goes all the way back to the Proto-Indo-European root that means summer, hot season of the year. So there's no interesting little tidbit for me to give to you there. Um, in terms of the use of the word summer, there was around by around 1300 in English, the use of the term summer or summers to refer to how old someone is was is available to us in writing. So, for example, you would say that this child is 10 summers old this year. So you count the age of things by years, or you say that cow has given birth for the past 3 summers, or something like that. Um, it also, during the 1300s, summer was used as an adjective. Um, so you could say, like we do, summer dresses and summer activities, things like that. And then this is an interesting one. In the 1590s, the term summer came to be known kind of secondarily and figuratively as something that is fleeting and lasts only as long as pleasure or prosperity lasts. So you are referring to, the if you are, um, if you are a person who um, enjoys, I don't know, something, if you enjoy swimming, then of course that's something that is enjoyable, but only for a certain amount of time. Is it pleasurable? And then at some point, the weather becomes too cold and it's no longer a pleasurable activity. So that kind of took on that meaning as a word to describe circumstances. So um, if you are happy about something that isn't going to last long, then perhaps you would have used that term summer um, to refer to that. And I was thinking about it because I thought, oh, that's really interesting. But we sort of have that still a little bit in that phrase. You might call, probably not anymore, but there was a time when you would maybe call someone a sweet summer child. And what you mean by that is they're kind of naive and they don't really understand the ways of the world. They've only ever experienced positive things in their life, that kind of thing. So we kind of have that a little bit, but apparently that was a thing that happened. And so then I also wanted to throw in there midsummer, the specifically midsummer, referring to the longest day of the year. We in our culture um, don't don't we I mean we talk about it, like, my kids are done with school now, and so they're on summer vacation even though we haven't reached June yet, but we tend to um, label our seasons based on when we've passed the date. So for example, we say, oh well, it's not spring yet because spring isn't until March 20th or whatever it is, 21st. I can never remember which numbers they are. So we start with the equinox or the solstice. But in earlier cultures like the Romans, they actually put that special day in the center of the season, and then they had a kind of a date on either end that kind of put that in the middle. So for the Romans, for example, the summer season ran from approximately May 10 through August 9 or 10. And so then that summer solstice would be literally midsummer. And so when we use that phrase or that term midsummer, that's kind of what that is referring to, even though we don't consider that to be the center of summer in terms of the way that we label our four seasons. There have been cultures where that has happened. There are other ways, of course, that summer is labeled culturally in the United States. We often will say that Memorial Day is the unofficial beginning of summer and Labor Day is the unofficial end of summer. That doesn't, of course, mean that the weather is going to cooperate. Here we can be still in the hundreds, even into October on some years. So we can try to line things up in that way, but that doesn't always necessarily cooperate weather-wise or agriculture-wise. In Australia and New Zealand, which are our two English-speaking Southern Hemisphere countries, summer is considered to run from December 1st to February 28th. So just through those 3 months is what is considered summer. Because I was a little disappointed by my looking at the etymology of the English word summer and not finding much of anything, I decided that I would try my hand at the Chinese character, since my kids both studied and one of them still studies Chinese, and I happen to know that particular character from when I was helping them during COVID with their Chinese homework. And the earliest version of the Chinese character that means summer was an image that combined the image for man and sun. So it's basically that, it was basically that picture that little tiny kids draw, where there's a stick figure person and then the sun beating down on them, and that's the character, the original character for summer. Um, the word the word summer in Chinese is sha, and that is also the name of a dynasty in of the Chinese empires that existed in the approximately 2000 to 1600 BC. So one of those really old Chinese dynasties was named this, and their character did not include the sun, but was still connected to that idea of summer. And so I'm sure there's lots of scholarship on why that is, and what they were attempting to draw in terms of theological or philosophical meaning in those. But I didn't go that deep into that rabbit hole today. I was just wanting to get a little something because I was a little disappointed in my summer going all the way back to the very beginning of English speech. So any other thoughts on summer, just kind of generally as a concept before we jump into a few summer festivals?
Well, maybe it's just the way people are. I mean, they do kind of shut down in the summer. And so they don't, I mean, there's a lot of summer celebrations, like fairs and different things like that. But for the most part, people just kind of want to sit on the beach and veg.
Enjoy themselves a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that we definitely tend to become more reflective and more in tune to the divine when we need something, right? So when things are going fairly well and the sun is shining and it's not dark all the time and we're not worried because there's nothing growing and we can't find food and things like that. Um, Perhaps that's why there's not quite as much going on in terms of religious traditions because we don't feel the need to make any gods happy or anything like that. There might be something like that going on there. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right, so here we go. So you'll have to forgive my Swedish. I'm going to say that this is called Midsummer Stang. I don't know. What does the circle above the vowel do? We don't know. I don't know. Sorry, Swedish speakers. Um, so this is the Swedish Midsummer. And Sweden is not the only country that continues to celebrate the Midsummer, but generally speaking, the Scandinavian countries and the I know Scandinavian doesn't refer to all of them, but we're talking about Finland and Sweden and Denmark. Um, they have some level of this, but Sweden is definitely the center, the highlight of it. Um, this festival comes from the time of the Middle Ages, and it is probably based in something pre-Christian that has to do with um, the magic of the summer solstice and the belief that nature has special powers during the summer because it's at its height of growth and flourishing, and so there are maybe magical powers like healing abilities and things like that. Um, that get involved. And so there would be parties and gatherings. The use of the maypole is still important and part of the Midsummer Festival in Sweden, which I thought was interesting because it's literally called the maypole, and I didn't understand really why that would be something used later in the summer because it's called the maypole. And so I looked into that a little bit, and apparently the um, the Swedish climate may have something to do with it because it's not as warm there in May as it is in other places like Germany, where these kinds of traditions come from. And so maybe they just pushed it into June because that was when things started to green up and they were able to get the greenery and flowers that were needed to celebrate in June, and then they just still continued to call the maypole, even though it wasn't May anymore. Um, it's also possible that the word that is used in these languages to refer both to the maypole and to the month of May is actually the other way around. So we think that the maypole is named after the month. Maybe the month is named after the maypole, and so it's not necessarily that you have to use the maypole only in May. It's that whatever month you use the maypole is May, something like that is possibly involved there. So regardless, they have that, the maypole tradition where the people dance around and have the ribbons and they all kind of intertwine with each other. Um, some other interesting traditions that go with the Swedish midsummer include skinny dipping at night and also placing different types of flowers under your pillow. Depending on the region that you live in, there are certain flowers that if you put them in combination under your pillow on the night of the midsummer, it will help to reveal to you who your beloved will end up being and who you will marry someday. So young people sometimes still do that, even though they probably know that it's not going to work too well. Um, the picture there that is an actual picture and not a painting of a red farm complex is a real place. It is part of the museum in Herkeberga. Um, that's the name of the I don't know what you would call it, the plantation, but not that's probably not that's not the right word. The farmstead, the buildings itself, but also the land surrounding it, the farm. Um, and it was built in the 1600s. And so it was um, actually used for these types of midsummer celebrations in the time when society was more based on lords and peasants rather than, kind of in the pre-industrial period. Um, Midsummer was, considered a time that was mysterious and lots of magic and supernatural possibilities. Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream is, a good example of some of the beliefs around the possibilities and the magic and the the thinning of the the distance between the physical world and the supernatural world on that night. Um, but Midsummer is also connected um, to Christianity, and so probably like in many places, the Midsummer Festival with the maypole and the beliefs in nature magic and things like that were were kind of slowly absorbed into some of the activities of Christianity as Christianity spread. Um, and the reason why this particular festival fits nicely with Christianity is because the Gospel of Luke tells us that John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin, was 6 months older than Jesus. And so if Jesus' birthday is on December 25th, then that means that John's birthday is on June 25th. And so the connection of the feast of St. John and this midsummer festival that is incredibly popular and big in Sweden in particular, kind of easily mesh together. So you get an interesting little collection and conglomeration of the some of the historically pagan traditions and beliefs and activities with the celebration of St. John's Day. So, for example, in Norway and Denmark and Finland, you have the use of solstice bonfires to represent um, John as the lamp shining to illuminate the coming of Christ. Things like that, where you kind of reinterpret the traditions in a way that fits in with the Christian theology. So, any questions about that one?
Is that Jesus holding John's head in
That is
the
John holding
heaven?
John's head, actually. I thought that was an interesting,
Oh,
an interesting
okay.
icon that we've got John there with his, you can tell that it's John because he's kind of grizzled and messy.
Yeah.
His hair is kind of frizzy, and he's wearing the fuzzy clothes out in the wilderness. But then he's also holding a head because he was beheaded. So I don't know what we've got going on there, other than he's holding his own head but still has his head. I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with that. Particularly fun one. All right, moving on. All right, so now I get to butcher some other people's languages. So this is Aomori Nabuta Matsuri. This is in Japan. And this is a festival that takes place in the city of Aomori, Japan. So that's where that word comes from. And it is a festival where the primarily the purpose of it is to have a parade using these huge lantern floats, and those are called the Nabuta. And usually the Nabuta floats, you can maybe see, it takes place at night, so it's a little bit difficult to see in the picture. You can see the float itself, but underneath there are people who are moving it along. And so you can see just how big these things are. They're huge. There's probably, I don't know, maybe 10 people in the line there on that side. And of course, there are more people around the other side moving it along. And they're pretty small compared to the enormous floats. So there are tons of these that go down the street. Um, and they are depicting historical people, characters from different mythologies, things like that. And so, to kind of tell a story. And like I said, they are paraded down the street. This happens in early August. And the purpose of it is to wake up, quote unquote, the sleepy souls in preparation for the fall harvest. So, in some ways, Karen, your idea that people just want to kind of sit around on the beach all summer, this makes sense, right? Like in August, you need to kind of snap out of it and get yourself ready for some more work. Um, there's the idea of purification rituals, being involved historically in this. Um, they believe that potentially this actually came out of a particular purification ritual where people would float much smaller lanterns down the river to ward off evil spirits and kind of wash away the laziness and lethargy of the heat of summer and prepare themselves for the new season of harvest. And then it developed more into this tradition. And um, that word Nabuta, which is what they call these floats, actually means drowsiness or sleepiness. And so it it's kind of about that, and preparing people um, to get back to work, I guess. But there's also um, another story that kind of fits into this festival, and it's related to a battle that supposedly took place where the people who tell the story were fighting against an army for over 12 years, and ultimately they were actually defeated. And um, they they tell the story that the followers of this defeated um, this defeated um, group, were forced to dig large holes, and they were buried alive. Dirt was thrown over them after they had dug the holes, And the people from the group who had surrendered to the victorious forces became slaves to the victors, and they were told that they had to stomp down the dirt over the graves of their compatriots who had refused to surrender. And so they say that that this Nebuta, this drowsiness festival, and the idea of moving the lanterns comes out of this story because the people who were buried were sent back to their roots in the world of the dead, and um, they were covered by the dirt. And the reason why that works is because of the particular characters that are used. Remember that Japanese, like Chinese, uses characters rather than phonemes, like our language does. And the characters World of the Dead and covering are part of this Nebuta word in Japanese. But there's also the part with the stomping makes sense because, as you can imagine, the people who are moving these enormous lanterns along are doing a lot of walking, a lot of stomping, and so their stomping is, in a way, a recollection of the forced stomping that the defeated people were forced to make. But now that they, have emerged from that and are no longer slaves to someone else, they can, kind of use it in an ironic way, and now they can kind of stomp away their overlords. Things like that can get into their into the mythology as well. So lots of different layers and lots of different possibilities, but kind of starting with that idea of washing away the drowsiness of summer, and potentially washing away the defeat of that in that mythological battle. Any questions or comments on this one?
So the picture on the right would be the people reenacting the stomping.
Yeah, that's part of one of the parades. You can see one of those lantern things there, kind of behind it a little bit. It's got there's like a blue pig looking face behind some of the people there. That's one of those enormous lantern floats that's coming down the street. So it's a, it's a parade. So they could be the stompers. They could be partially, just performers in the parade. But you know how these things kind of all layer up, and you don't think about the significance of it until after the fact, and then you say, oh yeah, well, we were stomping down the street, so we can fit this in with that mythology too. So I can't say for sure if these people thought of themselves as stompers, but they are stomping, yes.
Well, the float reminds me of Turtle Bay,
Oh yeah, yeah,
their festival now.
yeah, the lantern festival, yeah. Yeah, those lanterns are probably made in a similar fashion to what you see at Turtle Bay. All right. We got two more. So this one is called Homo Wo, and this is a festival that began with the Ga people in the Greater Accra region of Africa, which is today primarily the country of Ghana. So this is one that comes from Africa. So the story that goes with this festival is that there was a deadly famine in the land, and whether sometimes in the myth the people are traveling to relocate to Ga. Other times they just live there and there's a bad famine, but in both cases there's no rain and the crops failed to grow, and so they they struggled to survive either while traveling or just because of this famine. And eventually, the famine ended. The rains came back. They were able to plant their crops, and they were able to bring enough food together. And so, this is a celebration that taunts the hunger that once taunted them. And so homowo in the traditional in the native language means to jeer at hunger, to taunt hunger. And so they celebrate this festival in the summer. And this is not just a one day kind of festival. This is a multi-month, a whole season long period of remembrance and preparation for the festival day that eventually comes. Um, so in May and June is when you start the process, and this is the season when you plant. Most of the time, the most important crop of that you plant is maize. And once you have planted your maize, there is a 30-day ban on making noise. So you can't do drumming, you can't do singing. You are just attempting to be quiet. And the thing with the quiet almost certainly comes originally from an idea that making noise attracts evil spirits, and so we want to make sure that they don't come and destroy our crop while it's growing and in this vulnerable state. But it's also outside of that kind of superstition stuff, a period where it's quieter physically, but it's also kind of quieter emotionally and mentally so that you can reflect. You can reflect on that story of the famine. You can reflect on what you have. You can reflect on the belief that there is a greater power that will help you to to make sure that the rain falls and that the crops will come through, for you once again this year. There's also a superstition that silence actually helps crops to grow, which I personally have debunked with my sixth grade science fair project, where I played music to corn in one room of my house and did not play any music to the corn in another room in the house, and the corn in the room with the music grew bigger and faster than with no music. So I have debunked that personally as a scientist. However, that is a belief that is related to this particular festival. So you do that in May and June. And then in later part of the summer, finally the ban is lifted and you get to have parades and drumming and dancing, and family members travel to visit each other. People who have moved away from the area come back to participate. In fact, I didn't put any of this into my slides because it just kind of was getting too far into the weeds, but there's a schedule for the week of the festival that certain things are supposed to happen on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And there is a whole group of people that have a special name during this week, and it translates as the Thursday people, because these are the people who live far enough away that they're not going to come for the whole thing, but they all come on Thursday because the big stuff happens on that weekend, and so they come on Thursday so that they can participate in what's going on for the rest of the time. So the return to home for people who have, moved out to other regions that are too far away to participate every day, but are close enough that they can come back, are called the Thursday people. There's lots of different traditions and foods related to this festival. There is a steamed fermented maize dish that is served with palm nut soup and fish. During the festival, they will sprinkle some of this food on the ground, suggesting that they are feeding and appeasing their ancestors and their gods to give them protection in time, during for the rest of the year. There's also getting together with family and friends and neighbors. There's a tradition of eating together from one bowl to symbolize the connections of the community and the unity of the community. And there's a tradition of reconciliation, resolving disputes and things that have been going on through the year in this time. While I was looking into this, I found it was pretty cool. Portland actually has a really large counter, not counter because that's opposite, but kind of parallel celebration. I guess they have a fairly large Ghanaian Ghanaian immigrant community in Portland, and so they have the Portland Homowo celebration in September every year. So, and they invite the whole community, and it's a cool cultural experience for people. So, questions, comments on this one?
Maybe they're called Thursday people because it takes them that long to get there.
Maybe. I don't know. All right, last one, which is the most religious one in terms of, the kind of world religions that I was able to find. So we've got Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi is a Roman Catholic festival that is all about the body of Christ, and it's actually not it. I mean, I'm going to say this, and you're going to laugh at me because it's a long time, but it's not that old compared to a lot of the other big festivals related to Jesus that the Christian Church has. The Corpus Christi feast did not actually come into existence until 1264, which I know is a long time ago, but when we think about Christmas and Easter and some of these other big holidays, they are of course much older than that. And so this feast actually is due to the advocacy work of a woman named Juliana of Liège, and Liège is in Belgium, or was in Belgium, and there were groups of women there in the late 1100s who were dedicated to worshiping with and to the Eucharist. So they were kind of like nuns. They weren't nuns in the same way that we understand nuns. They didn't have a rule and things like that, but they lived together. They did charitable acts. They prayed together, those types of things. And Juliana had this real connection emotionally to the sacrament of Holy Communion. And she talked about how she wished that there was a feast day outside of Lent that could honor the Holy Sacrament of communion without the the darkness of the Lenten experience on it. So what she's referring to there is Maundy Thursday, being the day that the sacrament was instituted. But because it's during Lent, there are all kinds of limitations on what can be done. And she said that her experience of communion was something that was joyful, and she wanted to be able to express that in a formal feast day outside of the Lenten one that happened on Maundy Thursday. So she claimed in the early 1200s that she had visions of Christ, in which she was told that she needed to advocate for the institution of this feast of Corpus Christi. And she kept having this vision for the next 20 years, but she didn't tell anyone apparently about this for a long time until finally she told her confessor, who told the bishop, who then told the Pope. And so it was Pope Urban IV in 1264 who instituted this feast. And this is actually the first feast because because it happens so late. It's the first universal feast of the church that was instituted um, in kind of a formal way by the church. And they chose to place this feast day on the Thursday after Trinity Sunday. And the reason they chose this was because the other the other day that we celebrate and focus on the Eucharist is Maundy Thursday. And so they did it on another Thursday. But that one, Maundy Thursday, is about the passion of Christ and the death of Christ. And this one, the Corpus Christi, should be a day of joyful thinking about the Eucharist and communion with Christ. So we Lutherans don't celebrate Corpus Christi necessarily, although there are some Lutheran churches, Lutheran countries, not Lutheran countries, but countries where the Lutherans do celebrate Corpus Christi. But Martin Luther was not happy about this particular festival. He did not like it. He said, I have a fun quote from him because you know how he is. I am to no festival more hostile than this one, because it is the most shameful festival. At no festival are God and his Christ more blasphemed than on this day, and particularly by the procession. There's a procession that I'll tell you about in a minute. For then people are treating the blessed sacrament with such how do you say that word? Ignominy? I've never actually said that word out
Something
loud.
like that.
I read it, but I've never said it out loud.
Hard word.
Yeah,
Hard
that
word.
It becomes only play acting and is just vain idolatry. With its cosmetics and false holiness, it conflicts with Christ's order and establishment, because he never commanded us to carry on like this. Therefore, beware of such worship. So Luther did not like this because it was a festival of joy and frivolity, and Christ did not tell us to do this, and so he did not want it to be done. But some people in the Lutheran Church still do it. But generally speaking, it is a Roman Catholic thing. And there is, of course, a special mass that takes place on the Thursday after Trinity Sunday. Some places now are just pushing it to the Sunday that follows Trinity Sunday, because people don't tend to go to mass on a Thursday. And so they're kind of trying to get people to participate by putting it on Sunday when people are more likely to go to mass. But it is tradition to hold this mass in the street rather than in the church itself. There's a procession that happens. So in the pictures here, you can maybe see on the one that's all the way on the left that looks kind of like a little sun, that actually has the wafer in it. It's like a really fancy holder for the wafer itself. And then in the picture on the bottom right, you can see that there's a big old platform and candles and all kinds of stuff. And then there in the middle, you can see one of those little starburst thingies that's got the wafer in it. So they literally parade the host through the street during this procession. And the monstrance, which is the big starburst thing, is held up by a member of the clergy, and then they have the mass with communion involved with it. Um, oh, excuse me. So the picture in the middle is in Italy, and this is not necessarily just in Italy, but I thought this was a kind of interesting and cool thing, and I was able to find the name of it. So Infiorata means Festival of Flowers, and it is part of the Corpus Christi celebration in Italy. And what they do, Cindy, you'll like this, on the day um, the days leading up to the celebration and the parade, the procession of Corpus Christi, they make carpets made out of flowers that depict lots of different patterns and religious imagery and things like that. And they lay these beautifully crafted blankets of flowers onto the street where the sacrament will be processed the following day during the special outdoor mass. And so these beautiful mats are actually intended to be walked on by the procession that will be coming through. But it's very similar to the Rose Parade in terms of, putting together these outrageously beautiful and time consuming um, pieces of art that are then, used up very quickly and then thrown out because they're made out of living material.
So are they the plant themselves, or is it do they cut the flowers and
They cut
lay
them.
them out?
So where you see the patterns there, that's the literal street. So they lay out mats that are decorated with the cut flowers.
They're beautiful.
Yeah. And it goes, wherever in that particular town, wherever the procession has historically gone, they cover the whole thing. So it, depending on how big a thing it is, it can go for quite a distance. I mean, even in this picture, you can see it goes down, several blocks in the distance. And of course, thinking about, how much street you have to cover there, just in the picture, let alone wherever else they go. I'm certain that it's quite the undertaking for the artists to get it done. But I thought that was pretty cool, and I thought that Cindy would like that since she has been involved in decorating with plant matter in the past. So that's my summertime official religious celebration. I didn't really capture, why specifically this time. Like it talked a lot about Juliana and how she wanted something, during a season where she could be joyful with the Eucharist, and um, they wanted it on a Thursday because of the parallelism with the other Thursday and those types of things. And certainly, Holy Trinity is the last kind of major festival before you get into the long period in the summertime of not really a whole lot of major stuff going on anymore. The Easter season is over. We've passed Pentecost, then we do Trinity Sunday. And certainly there's something to be said to connect to Trinity Sunday itself. Theologically, you could, talk about Trinity Sunday and connecting to the body of Christ and things like that. But I didn't find any, really solid like the other one with, well, if Jesus's birthday is on December 25th, then John's has to be on June 25th because they're 6 months apart. Like I didn't find anything like that made it have to be on this particular day. But it's definitely a summer festival, and I was excited to find it because, like I said, there wasn't a whole lot to go on.
Well, I really appreciate this because Liam was visiting and he was looking at his calendar, but it's on his German phone and Corpus Christi is written there.
Uh-huh.
as a holiday. And, we had a big discussion about all the religious holidays in Europe or in Germany and how everything closes on those days.
Yes.
But I didn't know what Corpus Christi was. I kept saying to him, that doesn't sound German. That's not it. Those are not German words. He says, it's in my
Yep.
calendar.
It's Latin. And of course, here in
Yeah,
the United States, when we hear Corpus Christi, we just think of Texas.
right.
Right.
All right, so that's what I got. I have our little bit of a summary. I think, like I said, I'm still chewing over this why is it so hard to find summer holidays. And I mean, there were, to be fair, there were some that I already covered that could have uh, been in this session just because they happen to have to occur in the summertime. But I didn't want to just go around and, only give us just because it happens to fall in that time. I want to say why is it connected to this season? Why does it matter that it takes place now? And then the ones that don't really matter when they take place because they're connected to something else, like the theme, then I put it with the theme ones, like the confession and forgiveness one, or the community one, or something like that. So, for example, the Hajj, the trip to Mecca, takes place technically in the summer. Um, and I'm sure there are lots of reasons for that. One of them being practical because you don't have as much work to do at home after you've done your planting and you're just waiting for everything to grow. Um, and nowadays you can get away from work a lot more easily if it's summertime, at least in the Western world. But to think about why aren't there more summer festivals that like are intentionally meant to happen in the summer because of those connections. And like I said, I think you can go in the direction of, um, well, when we don't have a lot going on, then we don't have to think about religious needs as much because we don't, you don't need God, or you don't need the holy, as much when things are going your way and you think you can do it all on your own. But thinking about at least these four festivals that I looked into, we've certainly got, the joy and the plenty of summer, and the time when things are a little bit easier. But then there's also that little bit of a sense of, preparation and warning about what is to come or what could come, to still be grateful, to still be alert, to still be aware of what happens in life, and um, to be smart about it. There's definitely in I think all of our festivals, we've talked about the importance of community and connecting to other people, and certainly humans as social animals need that and can connect in a variety of different ways over a variety of different reasons. Definitely a time of more rest, certainly never idleness, historically, but not quite the pressing everyday pressure of, if I don't get this done, then my family is going to starve or freeze, or any of those things that you have in other times of the year. Did anybody see any other patterns that stick out in these four, or anything else that you can think of?
Well, in most of the other seasons, there was an emphasis on community and family and sharing and all of that. And I don't feel that coming through on these summer ones. But there is a lot of, I mean, in our country, it's barbecue season and picnics and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
which goes with that community thing. The rodeo parade, things
Yeah.
like that. But but for those other ones, it doesn't sound like that.
I think the Swedish midsummer with the maypole festivals and
Oh
things like
yeah.
that. I
Oh
can
yeah, that's
imagine that
right.
they would have had. I didn't look into foods and things like
That's
that for
true.
that one, but I'm imagining, that little farm picture that I showed you. That's an actual place. That tree in the middle wasn't nearly as big several hundred years ago, and they had their maypole in there, and they had tables of food and people running around and having a good time.
Oh,
So
that's true.
I can kind of picture that one being there, and the,
That's
the
true.
the one in Ghana, the Homowo,
Yes,
bringing people home. Yeah, I
that's
I think
true.
I don't know, maybe the reason we feel like it's less community related is um again because we don't, if things are going well, we don't need each other as much. We can pretend like we don't need each other. We can get on our own. We can get up in the morning and go out there and find enough food in the forest for myself and make it work on my own. But then when things get a little colder and a little less less ideal for living, then you have to kind of start
Yeah,
turning to other people.
yeah. Makes sense.
Any last words, Cindy?
No, I'm still dealing with pop-ups, if you can believe that. I've
Oh
been
my goodness.
bouncing and closing them all through our whole time together.
All right. Well,
So, so
Katie, thank you so
huh.
much.
but tell me again about what we're doing in September.
Well, so Cindy, tell me again what we were talking about. I know it's related to the liturgy, but we want to talk about kind of the liturgical seasons and
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh,
the
okay,
colors.
okay. It's been a long time since I've thought about that.
Yeah, so I'll have to do some pondering this summer about how we want to organize something like that, especially because we don't want it to
Yeah,
be too much like this one with, doing it seasonally.
right, right. I understand.
Just pick the colors of the rainbow and go in that order.
Hmm.
Well, we do have red, but I don't think there's any orange season, so I'll have to figure that out.
No, purple, blue, green, no yellow, no orange, but red. Okay, so most of them.
Yeah, we'll do all right. All right. Well, thank you,
Thank you
ladies.
so much.
I hope you can both get some good rest tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, and Karen, I'm still going to see you on Saturday.
Yes.
Katie, are you coming?
I'm not. Penny's got some ballet stuff going on, so but you
Okay.
enjoy. Tell everybody I said hi.
Yeah, I hope so. John had a bad day yesterday.
Mm,
So, yeah. So I'm planning to be there, but gee, I'm gonna make my salad. So there you go.
yes. All
That
right.
should be something helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
All right.
okay.
Take
Okay.
care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.